Okay. We're good with audio.
My gosh, freaking Eric is here.
We're actually okay. You can. You're good.
We good?
You're good.
Sick. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming. How was the pizza?
Good. Yes.
Oh hell yeah. Well, since we've been trying to figure out the tech for so long, I'm sure you've stared at this screen for a while. In case you haven't seen it yet, take a look. You can probably guess what it's trying to do and the libraries that are involved. Who's used Sci-kit before? And I'm guessing you've either learned it in school with the ML class or use it as a job, something like that.
Well, I've used it. Sorry, I don't even do this stuff, and I've used it.
Now you know how popular it is. So I remember when I first used Sci-kit I was in a math class actually at BYU, and it blew my mind. Back when I first got into ML, linear regression was enough to just make me. It doesn't do that anymore, but back then I remember how impressed I was. And it was cool just running a little Python script in the terminal and everything, and then just magic happens. That was great. Every time I go back to that memory, gives me goosebumps. But when I was in school, I never thought about, okay, I built this model. Maybe it's more impressive than a linear regression. Maybe it's like a support vector machine, or maybe it's some neural network. That's great. I can run it on my local machine, but does it make any money? Does it create any business value? Who can access it except me? I'm the only person who can log into my computer. No one else can use it or even see it. Most people don't know I have such a thing. That's something I had to learn after I got out of school. Is there's actually so much that happens before and after building an actual model. And that's what inspired this project. I call it the ML service template. It's something it's like a baby version of my previous company, Ben Labs' ML platform. And my team lead is actually here. If he wants to show, stand up and get a round of applause, he can, but he doesn't have to. It's up to him.
It was a terrible platform. You don't want to use it.
Only after we left, though. That's Eric. He was my manager and mentor at my previous job, and everything was great until the layoff happened. That inspired me to come up with this mini project. Basically, with this GitHub repo, what you can do is, yes, you'll be building some kind of scikit-learn model, but it actually goes live because it'll get deployed to AWS. Here is the architecture diagram. I try to make it pretty, but I'm no UX designer, so this is all you get.
Jay, do you want to hit the minimize button, or can you type that thing?
Oh, this one?
Oh, that just recently started to pop up.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, sick. Nice. So this is what we've been talking about for the past 10 minutes. A scikit-learn model, whether it's regression, classification, clustering, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what goes around that? If you want to interact with it, for those of you who study computer science, in college, there's the front end and the back end usually to an application. And since technically the ML model is part of the business logic, you want to wrap it around an API. And that's the next layer of the cake. It's called Fast API. It's one of the most robust web framework for Python nowadays. There are other ones out there too, like Flask, Django. They're great, but Fast APIs test the most beautiful documentation. That's not why you should use it. You should use it because It's like the performance is really, really good. You can read some like articles on, if you go to their official documentation, they'll link you to how it compares to the other Python frameworks for not just serving ML models, but for web development in general, for those of you who choose to use Python as your backend. Okay, now that we've wrapped our ML model around an API, what next? Because technically it's still local. You're the only person who has access to it. Nobody knows your computer password or how to navigate in your terminal. The next step is to containerize it. Oh, shoot. I meant this. So who's heard about Docker before? Raise your hand. OK, sweet. Basically, what a Docker container does is, because like everybody has different computers, whether it's like brand or operating system, or even down to the Python package dependencies, the versions of it, maybe scikit-learn 0.1 or 0.2, those can be like hugely different. Docker is the solution to unifying operating system software dependencies all in this one little box. So wherever your Docker container is, whether it's on your computer or on your colleague's computer, it's going to act the same because all the dependencies are packaged in, including your code. So there's a Docker container. We're one step closer to deploying our ML model to production. And the last and final layer of the cake is AWS. Who here has worked with either AWS or another cloud provider before? It's great. Well, AWS is definitely the leading cloud provider nowadays. It has like so many services, whether you want to serve your containers like the one we just built with Docker, or you want to create an API, or you want to have a database of whether it's relational data or non-relational data. AWS has offerings. Oh, so does Azure and Google GCP. But for this service template, we're going to use AWS. Before I dive into the actual GitHub repo, does anyone have any questions or comments about the motivation or the architecture so far? Yes.
Are you running the scikit-learn model in the same process as the fast API server?
Yes. Well, actually, it's pre-trained.
But for inference, like at inference time, are they part of the same process?
Yeah. Good question. Yes.
How would you handle, or I don't know if you're going to get there, but scaling this, right? Like, this is just a single model. How many, like, what's the load that the single model could have? And are you going to talk about scaling that? Or, because I don't want to jump the gun if you're getting there. Otherwise, I would like to know how you would scale that.
I have some ideas of how to do it. That's not part of, I didn't prepare that, but if we were to scale it, well, it's nice because the AWS service we're going to use is ECS, which is Elastic Container Service. These guys are serverless. They scale down and up. They even scale down to 0. So it's like pay as you go. And if you're not using it, it's not going to cost you any money, unlike an EC2 instance. So yeah, this scales really well, and it's the most cost-effective solution. I mean, we can use ECS because for scikit-learn models, we don't need GPUs. With PyTorch, good luck. You have to use EC2. But without further ado, let's dive into the actual code. Actually, we're not going to even dive into the code. I'll just show you how you can use this repo to build and productionize any scikit-learn model you want. Oh, this GitHub repo is public. If you have the link, you have access to it. You can clone it. You can play with it. Here's basically what I just said, but in a much more concise way. And I used a couple resources to help build this repository. I used Terraform for the first time because I was trying to learn Terraform. So instead of using.
It's a big deal, guys. I wish more people I worked with knew Terraform. So
What do they use instead?
it's called ClickUps. Press button deploy.
They don't use it for as
God,
code.
ask for
Bespoke everything.
This isn't like a meeting like a war whose infrastructure is code tool is the best. Like,
No. This is I appreciate you using Terraform because
It
it's
is really easy to forget when you have services running.
yeah. No, yes.
Yeah, I imagine getting bankrupt because of an EC2 instance with a GPU.
Jeez.
Oof. But yeah, here are the steps you can do. Literally anyone with a computer with a Wi-Fi and with a GitHub account, you can go in right now, clone the repository, follow the steps. They'll baby you through all the steps. Oh, and you have to have an AWS account. Yada, yada, yada. Here, there's, well, AWS, here's my 2 cents with AWS. Their services are amazing. There are many. There are like a huge variety of it, but their UI is so bad. It's so painful to watch. Yes.
So let's say you wanted to have people try it out, but not set up and have to pay money. Could you just put your model up on Hugging Face and just have people try it out there?
Oh,
Yeah, it's a little bit harder. You can use Radio, which abstracts away this fast API stuff, but you do have to set up your own FRP server. Otherwise, the link is going to expire in 3 days.
Oh, so you at some point you're gonna have to start paying for it.
Yeah.
Oh, don't.
Either you pay your own electricity bill and run it off of like an old laptop in your house, or yes, you are going to pay for it.
It's tempting.
Your concern is going to be addressed at the very bottom of this GitHub README.
Oh, cool.
So we'll actually get there. I'm glad you mentioned it though. It's like we don't want our wallet to suddenly disappear. But yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about the steps. You can read them yourselves. Basically, you just have to have AWS account. Yeah, deploy all the complicated bash commands are like abstracted away using the makefile command. Oh, there are a couple of them. They look like this. Okay, they're not terribly complicated, but it'll take the makefile commands will take all the. You don't have to worry about Terraform. Just run the makefile commands. You don't even have to type Terraform. It's too long of word to type.
Terraform installed, though.
That is true, which you can do by.
configure your provider.
Hmm?
You gotta configure your Terraform provider.
Oh yeah.
Yes, but thank you.
Oh yes, here are the instructions for installing Terraform. You can click into that. Let me see if it actually works. Okay, there we go. It works. Yeah, here's the repo. Feel free to play with it. So to give you some context about this talk, this is not what I came here for. This is very spontaneous. This was a pet project I made while I was laid off in the past couple months. And a month ago, when I just finished building it, it worked. It worked. But who knows what happened in the past month? I just left it there. Maybe it works. So I will do a live demo. That will probably fail, but it might succeed. In that one, there's like 1% chance it might succeed. So who knows? I mean, if you want, it's not fun to be part of a drama, but it's fun to watch it from a distance. So here's the drama that you'll watch from a distance.
So let's talk about this real quick. There are a bunch of people here who are students are trying to learn this stuff. Give them a direction. Like, where would you go to extend this service template? Would you go not just ECS but Fargate? Would you go to EKS? Like, how would you make this project fit somebody else's needs?
Oh, that's a great question. So the best thing I would do is, so you see there are a bunch of links attached to this README. They're all like major tech providers, whether it's cloud or ML. Just to give you an example, I chose AWS for this project, but there are 2 other big cloud providers out there. Maybe it's GCP, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure. If you happen to use one of those at your job instead of AWS, definitely read their docs and luckily, Terraform is cloud agnostic, meaning you can provision AWS resources as well as GCP and Azure resources. So I would start, if you want to extend this project to suit your need, I would highly recommend just start by clicking into all the links I have attached here and just clicking around those websites. Those like Terraform, AWS, well, they all have great websites except AWS. So that's where I would go to take this project to the next step. And and to cover that really big point,
Paying for it,
yeah, paying for it, like when you go, after you finish all the steps, make sure, I even said important there with all cap. There's a reason I did that.
About 3 sizes bigger in Reading.
Make it an H3.
Oh,
Never, ever, ever forget this.
yeah, make sure you tear down your infrastructure. This is not going to cost you too much, but still, like over time, it'll accumulate. If you don't tear down your services, it's gonna cost you. And for those of you who are still in school, I graduated from college last year, and when I was in school, I was never taught about cloud or just the operations side of things in general. They still don't talk about it. Oof.
This winter semester, you are going to have the first thing on office.
Wow.
I mean, I graduated 15 years ago. There wasn't a cloud tax point, but now not talking about it still kind of baffles me.
It's bonkers. They don't talk about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, my advice for students or my past self, instead of going after the sexiest thing, whether that's LLM or even classical ML, like, I feel like what would really set you apart is having a strong foundation in the cloud, whether it's AWS or GCP or Azure. It'll set you miles apart from the rest of STEM graduates. Yeah, that's my TED Talk. But yeah, for those of you who are interested,
Yeah, I was just gonna say something on that front for all like the BYU CS people. I don't know if there are any like CS cloud classes, but there is an IS cloud class, IS 531. So by Dr. Kettle. So it's not ML ops, but it's AWS. So you just build a website and then like post it in a million different ways. So yeah.
Eric's course.
So another point I wanted to bring up is an API just exposed to the public web is typically not a great idea. You probably want to gate it with an API gateway, and AWS has an API gateway which kind of works. It's fairly cumbersome to get it set up the first time, but once it is, it works quite well. And that way, you could set like throttling limits, bandwidth limits, usage restrictions, or like create API keys so that someone can't just DDoS you, blow up your service.
Just don't post about it.
Well, if he's gonna do a live demo, then someone else has to be racing to see if they can spend all of his cloud credits.
It's like you said, it's public API. What do you mean racing? They have bots for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a public Docker image for that, right? The bombastic, I think it's beat up.
Yeah, it's like I'm pretty sure they have. They use it mostly for doing DoD attacks, but
oh,
DDoS. Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I've been having a long day. I meant DOS. You know what I meant.
one more.
No, you're good.
Sorry. One more thing, if you really want to dive deep into ML ops and the technologies behind it and how to do it, here's the resource that we'll go to. If in case you haven't heard about ML Ops Club, it's basically everything you just saw in the repo, but on steroids. It's like, yeah, written by someone who will actually know their stuff. And yeah, well,
Ooh, we should discount.
There's generous scholarships for people in need. So.
Oh wait, did that just say no discount? Let's go back down.
It's Eric's course, by the way, guys. He's the guy that's
It's a great course on ML ops and API gateway and all that stuff. It starts in October. And also, if you do want to take it and you want, and cost is an issue because it is $500. Like there's a scholarship program, and there's some people who've like donated money after they take the class to like forward on to people who want to take it. So we have some funds there.
Yeah, so if you really want to dive deep, that's the place to go. But for now, feel free to mess around with my repo, fork it, do whatever you want with it. Yeah, and have fun. That's all I have. Thank you.